Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar. In today's webinar we're going to be looking at some of the endpoint exploits used in the very popular TV series called Mr. Robot, and then discuss the ways that these exploits can be thwarted. We'll also take a closer look at the insider threats that exist virtually in every organization, and also outline some ways that companies can address these threats via data leak prevention technology. So I know that everyone's time is very important. We'll be going through some of this information fairly quickly and try to keep the webinar under 30 minutes so everyone can get back to their jobs. Just as an introduction, my name is David Matthiesen, and I'm the Director of Strategic Accounts here at DeviceLock. Just to give you a little background on myself, I've been involved in the network application, data, and endpoint security areas for over 25 years, and I've co-founded and managed data security-focused companies prior to my position here at DeviceLock. So here's a quick look at what we're going to be doing today with the agenda you see on your screen. I'll start by having a very brief company background on DeviceLock for people who aren't quite familiar with us, and then we'll jump right into looking at some of the exploits featured in Mr. Robot, along with how these threats can be thwarted using data leak prevention software. Then we'll discuss in more detail one of the main overriding exploits used in Mr. Robot, and then we'll hopefully have time for a short Q&A session. And then I'll conclude with providing our contact details for anyone who wants further information on what our product can do. Before we start, I'd like to point out to the GoToWebinar panel on the right of your screen. Typically, there is a place where you can type in your questions during the webinar. So I'd like to encourage everyone to post questions as they come up during the webinar. And once we get to the Q&A session, I'll try to answer those questions live. And if we do run out of time, we'll have those recorded, and I'll be able to answer those questions via email. All right. Let's just give everybody a little background on DeviceLock. The company's only been known as DeviceLock really for about the last 9 years, but the company goes all the way back to 1995 when it was producing shareware, and then produced DeviceLock commercially since 1996. And we're a privately held company with offices all over the world. In the Americas, we're headquartered in San Ramon, California, and we have another office in Vancouver, British Columbia, and then several across Europe. Started out as kind of a pioneer in the Windows endpoint device and port control space, and evolved into more mature spaces of the true endpoint data leak prevention space, and also we've added DLP e-discovery for data at rest. DeviceLock is a world leader in endpoint device and port control with over 70,000 customers who deployed our products on well over 7 million endpoints. And as you can see, we're also several awards we've accomplished across the years, and across several different leading data and PC security publications have acknowledged our capabilities in the space. The product scales very well, as evident by the large deployment to date in North America for over 80,000 endpoints. So let's talk about the Mr. Robot show. For all of you who are fans, this won't be anything that you don't already know, especially if you watch the whole first season. Mr. Robot is a series on the USA Network that follows the exploits of kind of a schizophrenic character called Elliot Anderson, who by day is a cybersecurity engineer in a company called AllSafe, but by night he's really a vigilante hacker with an organization called the F Society, which is an anonymous-like group of hackers bent on causing economic turmoil by destroying the financial data of this big evil corporation called E-Corp, which is a worldwide conglomerate, and is also an AllSafe client. So as you can see, the series has received a lot of positive response, and part of that is because of the accurate, realistic displays of hacking. Instead of showing hackers typing frantically and allegedly cracking encryption and bypassing every firewall in a system, the series is really more focused on social engineering and more realistic ways that hackers with possibly malicious intent will get to your information. It's not only accurate in terms of the hacking technologies used or techniques used, but also in terms of getting inside the mind of a hacker regarding their motivations, their mindsets, how they look at the world in terms of identifying vulnerabilities that they can possibly exploit. There are a number of hacking techniques used in the series, such as phishing scams and even, to some cases, blackmail to get access to computer systems. But it's the endpoint-based exploits that were most interesting to us and the ones we're going to be focusing on in this webinar. We'll also take a deep look into the insider threat in terms of ways to eliminate or minimize its potential impact on your organization. So the first one we'll look at, the first exploit, showed up very early in the series. It's really a very simple way to introduce malware or a virus into the computer network. In this case, the exploit is performed via an infected music CD. If you happen to recall this episode, the hacker posed as a hip-hop artist in front of the AllSafe building for a couple weeks, so the employee of the company was already familiar with kind of seeing him, and in a way that worked to gain his trust. They saw this guy out there for that long, just trying to push his music, allegedly. In fact, as the storyline played out, the Allsafe employee was also being blackmailed, but the vehicle to introduce the malware was actually the music CD with the malware hidden on the disk. Once the CD was inserted, the malware was installed, and the hacker's foreign country group then had access to to the Allsafe company's computers. And since eCorp, the big evil corporation, was an Allsafe client, this also provided a potential avenue for hackers to infiltrate the eCorp system. So if you think about it, there were a few vulnerabilities utilized here. One was the infected disk going in the computer itself. The second vulnerability exploited was familiarity and trust. And the third was the human emotion of more or less shame, since the blackmail was based on exposing an affair that the employee was having, as well as gathering some personal banking information they had access to. So basically that's one physical exploit and at least two human exploits identified here. So the next exploit is really kind of an oldie but a goodie. Unfortunately to say, it's still very effective because it capitalizes on another universal human trait, curiosity. In this particular episode, the F Society, the big hacker group, their operative drops a number of infected USB thumb drives in the parking lot of a prison with the goal of loading some malware into the prison network in order to unlock all the cells at a specific time to free one person they care about, but several others as well. Because of the very limited time that they had to hack the network and the fact that the prison's network perimeter is very secure, they banked on the tried and true quote-unquote parking lot USB drive penetration method that's used by several, both white hat and black hat organizations. And lo and behold, it worked. An employee picks up one of the thumb drives and curiosity gets the best of him as he plugs it into his prison network computer. However, the exploit fails when the antivirus software pops up with a warning and the employee frantically pulls the USB thumb drive out and also the network cables as well. However, on the failure of the exploit, the hacker operative merely states, well, if you gave me more than an hour, I could have written the malware in a way that the antivirus wouldn't have caught it. So really it wasn't the fact that it couldn't have worked, just that more time was needed to write some better malware. Time which actually most hackers do have, except in this particular Hollywood case. So actually, if we could back up a slide. Oh, sorry, no, I have it here. Next slide, please. There we go. So because plan A of the infected USB drive didn't work, and knowing the difficulty in hacking the prison's network perimeter, the character Elliot and another F Society operative launched plan B, which is a Bluetooth-enabled quote-unquote man-in-the-middle attack. While parked in a nearby car within Bluetooth range of a police cruiser, Elliot, again the main character, hacks the police cruiser's keyboard wirelessly to get access to the prison's electronic cell door system through their unencrypted 4G network. He finds a Bluetooth device on his phone and uses some software on his laptop called Blue Sniffer to identify and take over the keyboard so he can actually enter an exploit into the police cruiser's laptop and transmit it to the police network. Kind of to distract the officer while he's hacking the computer, another F Society operative suggestively talks to the officer to take his attention away, and while all this is happening on his car laptop sitting next to him. Along with the Blue Sniffer tool, Elliot uses a multi-blue USB Bluetooth dongle to type on the police cruiser's computer with his own laptop. This device is able to translate between different software and hardware that uses Bluetooth to connect to other devices. So in this episode, the hack was successful, the malware was loaded on the prison network, and all the cell doors were opened automatically at 9 p.m. So when you think about this hack, two vulnerabilities were utilized: the unsecure Bluetooth protocol and the human vulnerability of distraction by the attractive F Society operative engaging the officer's attention away from his computer. So these are three of the endpoint attacks that we'll be looking at as a way to thwart in the upcoming slides with our device lock solution. However, there's a significant fourth exploit, which I think is actually the most important one, and we'll take a look at that even more closely after we discuss how device lock is able to deal with the first three exploits. So again, highlighting the first three exploits from Mr. Robot. From a technology standpoint, we can see that each of them utilized either a peripheral device or a port vulnerability to initiate the attack. In the first exploit, it was an optical CD drive. In the second, it was a USB device. And in the third, it was a Bluetooth through the Bluetooth protocol. So the good news is that each of these three exploits can be easily thwarted using device lock's data leak prevention solutions. In these cases, though, ironically, device lock's features are not directly protecting against data leaking out of an organization as per usual, but it's blocking or mitigating malware from entering the computer network, as well as blocking malicious activity by exploiting the Bluetooth protocol in order to gain access to the computer and ultimately to the network. As you can see from this diagram, device lock provides control of these types of devices or media that can be accessed at the endpoint, and it's highly configurable. And just for a little background, device lock is a software-only solution that is installed in the endpoints themselves, and it offers very easy management administration through native integration of our Microsoft Active Directory Group Policy MMC snap-in console. It goes right into the administrators of Windows typically use their native tools and plug our product in for use. This allows for highly configurable yet simple way to manage our endpoint DLP solution in mid-sized to large networks. Now, in the first exploit of the corrupted CD drive, using device lock, access to the drive could be blocked totally, could be made read-only, or you can make sure that the certain file types cannot be accessed on any CD drive. In this case, you could perhaps configure the drive to only allow WAV files or MP3 files for their music purposes, but then block any other file type, which would include any malicious files or executables. In the second exploit, with the USB thumb drive, once again, using device lock configured properly, the USB port can be locked down in a number of ways. The USB port and/or typical USB device classes and types can either be blocked for all, only allowed for special users or AD groups, for instance, Active Directory groups, or you can assign specifically known device models or even specifically known unique device IDs to specific users and groups to the exclusion of all other devices with what's called a whitelist. Or you can even define the types of files that could be read or written. So you have, and if you can't read it, then you can't access it. So we can also look at the file content with our DLP capabilities as well, if you want to look into there to make value judgments on whether or not the file is allowed to be accessed or read or written. So anyway, back to our use case, malware can be stopped or at least mitigated by not allowing any random USB device to just have access to the PC or network in the first place, and additionally by restricting the files or content that can be accessed if the USB drive was allowed by policy. This, of course, would be additional to any antivirus or anti-malware software that already should be in place. Regarding the third exploit, utilizing Bluetooth is a very interesting one, and one of the most people aren't really aware of or have had experience dealing with, since many of the devices that we have attached via Bluetooth are really just keyboards or mice or headsets, those types of things, which most people do not consider real security threats. But the Bluetooth protocol gives hackers a way into your computer, and in the case of Mr. Robot, the protocol gave access to a trusted computer. So once you've taken control of that computer, the system thinks that you're the trusted, authorized employee, and allows for full access to the PC and the underlying network if connected and also authenticated to that. So again, in this scenario, device lock allows you to block and or mitigate Bluetooth access. It has the flexibility of allowing access to Bluetooth human interface devices, which are things like keyboards and mice, and headsets, things like that, while simultaneously blocking all other Bluetooth file and device traffic, which is very important. The last part would have stopped aspects of this particular exploit. However, the sophisticated exploit using a keyboard would suggest that all Bluetooth should probably be blocked for PCs while out in the wild. Perhaps you could allow Bluetooth when inside the corporate network, which is something device lock provides, with both a regular policy that could be used while the PC or the laptop is inside the perimeter, and then also assigning an offline policy that might be more secure when that laptop is out in the wild. So in this case, it was Bluetooth, but there are still other ways to get connected, such as infrared or even old legacy ports like serial and parallel ports, things that we've mostly forgotten about that don't come standard on most new computers. But the hackers know that these are still ways to infiltrate a Windows computer. Because device lock has been developing port security and data leak prevention software since 1995, we have a lot of experience in these legacy types of ports and know how to lock them down. So in each of these three scenarios, if the organization was using device lock properly configured, the hacker attack would not have happened. So just to give you a little more background on how device lock endpoint DLP solution works and is structured, the suite consists of three separately licensable software modules. The first is called the device lock core itself, which is our original product, first released commercially 20 years ago. Yes, 20 years. So this is a very mature, well-established, market-leading product, again, with over 7 million devices protected worldwide so far. We're currently on version 8, so it's very well vetted. It's been out there a long time doing what it's supposed to do. It's been used in classified military environments, and is, again, as you saw earlier from some of the slides, it's garnished several dozen awards as well. Device Lock provides the core capabilities and is the kind of the basic framework or building block in which the other two modules optionally integrate. Device Lock resides in the actual kernel, and as such can really contextually secure peripheral ports and devices, whether they're on the main bus of the computer or via plug-and-play ports. You can do this for both Windows and actually the Macintosh platform as well. For Windows, it also resides in the print spooler and therefore handles all printing to locally attached printers and to the network. One of the oldest ways of getting data out of a company is just printing it. It provides hardware keylogger detection and blocking, and is really the base engine for all the auditing, shadowing, and alerting in the full product suite. So you don't have to buy an extra separate product for any of these features. Auditing, shadowing, and alerting are included in the core product. In a similar way, Network Lock provides contextual control capabilities to IP protocols, but it also addresses the network-related threat vectors like anything regarding email or whether it's corporate or webmails or other instant messengers, social networks, cloud services, the old FTP protocol, things like torrents, and even internal traffic over SMB. Moving on to Content Lock, that plugs into both Device Lock Core and Network Lock, but only on the Windows platform. It can look inside files and sessions to inspect content for sensitive information, things like social security numbers, credit card numbers for PCI compliance, keyword filters, document properties, and anything else you can really kind of define as an admin based on either keywords themselves or through a regular expression. We also integrate, and we can see what, if you have Oracle, we can look at Oracle IRM tags, and any combination of these rule types can be combined. So you can be very specific about what you're allowing, what you're blocking, and even also what you're shadowing. Kind of uniquely, a Content Lock can also employ on-the-fly optical character recognition in over 30 foreign languages to discover sensitive data that might otherwise be hiding in things like PDF file scans, image files, and things of that nature. Incidentally, we also have a discovery piece, not shown here, that enables you to gain content-aware visibility and control over sensitive data at rest. So data that's sitting on your servers or endpoints are just sitting there, not in motion or not in use, but stuff that's stored on the network in a Windows-based or any other SMB-compatible storage. So we can proactively prevent potential data breaches. Okay, so now that you got a brief on the Device Lock DLP suite's capabilities, I want to talk about a fourth exploit that really serves as the backbone for the entire Mr. Robot series, and that method is called social engineering, or the all-too-human nature side of network vulnerabilities. While Device Lock DLP can go a long way to prevent accidental or malicious data leakage along the many common exploits we've already covered, the ultimate threat to most sensitive data is the person behind the device, their nature, their character, and maybe how they react to certain situations or how they handle data. In one episode, Elliot really lays it out when he says, quote, you see this on your screen, "People always make the best exploits. I've never found it hard to hack most people." People don't think about that. If you listen to them, watch them, their vulnerabilities are like a neon sign screwed into their heads. So again, the focus here is hacking not necessarily the computer system, but hacking the person to get whatever they need in order to get into the computer system. But Elliot's statement is a reminder that sometimes you need to protect even your most trustworthy people from themselves, and Device Lock certainly can help in this regard. Because when we step out in the world of television and really look at how data breaches actually occur out in the real world, we're presented with some very interesting facts. So let's take a quick look here at the two very different kinds of threats. So on the left is your typical nefarious, Darth Vader-looking guy, kind of like some of the operatives that might have been in the Mr. Robot's F Society, whose real motivation is to get inside your system, steal your data, or wreak havoc on your network. And on the right is your company's really most competent and trustworthy employee, Millie, who's so conscientious that she likes to take work home on the weekends, usually be on a USB flash drive, or she might even have client data on her own corporate laptop. So, truly, which one's the bigger threat to your data? So when you step out of the world of television in the real world to look at the root cause of data breach incidents, you'll find that the vast majority, 63% in this particular poll, and others validate this, are caused by unintentional mistakes of trusted authorized users like Millie, while only 37% in this particular poll were caused by malicious or criminal acts. Okay, even though the press kind of highlights one over the other, the real facts underlying that show the opposite. So although the malicious hacking incidents get a lot of the front page news due to their their natural intrigue, the greatest cause of data breach incidents in any organization is their trusted employees, who are conscientious, loyal, but also prone to the most basic of human characteristics, and that's making simple data handling mistakes. Companies are more likely to focus on the outsider threat. This can easily be shown by how they spend their money on data security, where upwards of 80% of their budget is typically focused on perimeter defenses to keep out those malicious hackers, the guy on the left. It's like they spend most of their resources to create a hard outside shell, but forget that inside there's this soft, gooey center that's vulnerable. But when millions thumb drive with a sensitive, personal identifiable information or personal health information, for instance, that should have been prevented from being there, by a DLP content policy in the first place, falls out of her pocket or a purse, and then it's picked up by someone who in turn sends it to the media or uses it for identity theft, very quickly Millie's mistake turns into front page news and a high liability for the organization. Or perhaps she picks up some malware or virus on the drive from her underprotected home PC and then introduces that device back into the office network where it may or may not be caught by the organization's antivirus software. Could be a zero-day exploit. You never know. With each of these examples, though, the money and the resources that you spend on defending the perimeter is really gone for naught. So really, how do you stop the root cause of most data breaches? Well, a lot of companies focus on policies and training, which is great. But however, policies can be misinterpreted, maybe too complex, or even counterproductive to a company or an employee's normal business practices and probably to their productivity as well. The common result is that the data security policies are only loosely followed, or maybe they're even intentionally ignored, or maybe they're just too confusing to the point that employees do not really know how to do their jobs without contravening the policy. The reality is that a written data security policy without any technology-based monitoring or enforcement is really doomed to fail. And that's really where DeviceLock DLP comes in. We focus on the endpoints where most frequent, inadvertent, and malicious data breaches actually do occur, and then provide easy-to-deploy and configure software that tackles a problem at the typical source of the breach, the actual endpoint itself, not the network perimeter. So at DeviceLock, we're protecting against both the malicious endpoint attacks of hackers, but also the inadvertent data breaches caused by trusted employees. We've been doing this for over 20 years for over 70,000 customers and 7 million endpoints worldwide so far. So that's it for the formal part of the presentation, but we still want a little time for questions, and I can see we have a few that got typed in. So let me take a look at these. So one question, so is DeviceLock actually a malware prevention solution? Okay. So while this webinar does highlight some ways in which we assist with malware prevention in general, DeviceLock's primary focus is on preventing sensitive data from actually leaking out through the removable media or network ports on Windows endpoints. With DeviceLock DLP, the organization can actually make judgments and rules on data egress based on transaction channel or context, or most certainly the content of the information. I mean, part of the context, quote-unquote, equation is shutting down or mitigating access to data leak channels while monitoring for content on the data channels that are allowed for authorized users and groups. In the examples we discussed previously in the webinar, we help minimize malware introduction exposure with these granular controls for ports and device types. Second question. Our company has over 5,000 users. How do you manage and administer DeviceLock in a company of our size? Easy. DeviceLock is designed specifically for Windows 80 admins to both configure, deploy, and maintain with the lightest architecture possible. DeviceLock is typically deployed and managed through Active Directory group policy, GPOs, or group policy objects that Windows admins are completely comfortable using for endpoint policy settings, as well as software upgrades and predictive reporting. DeviceLock consoles operate whenever you normally manage your AD group policy, and then completely optional server-based piece for the audit collection functions can piggyback on whatever servers you might have that have open connection capacity during the day. And all they really do is simply collect and aggregate audit and shadow records from the endpoints and put those in a central location for reporting and forensic analysis. Let's see, another question. We have a combination of Macs and PCs as an organization. Does DeviceLock manage Macs and other devices besides Windows? Okay. Obviously, we manage Windows. We also mentioned earlier we manage Macs. We do have peripheral port device control, or what's really the core for the Mac platform. But currently, there aren't any network-aware or content-aware features for the Mac platform. So simply the blocking and tackling of the peripheral ports and devices, things like USB, CDs, etc., things that were covered in the exploits here earlier. But for other devices, I'm assuming you mean other devices, maybe like phones or tablets, etc. We certainly do control what they can do when they're locally connected to a device lock managed Windows PC. As a peripheral device attempting to sync data maybe with iTunes or something like that, we do control that very specifically. But if they're used as an independent endpoint themselves, we can only really manage these non-natively if they're using some type of virtualized solution like an RDP or ICA service like Citrix or VMware or terminal services where they're where they're getting basically a Windows session and we're actually managing that Windows session from the server side. So for instance, if you're connecting from your home PC and through maybe a VPN into maybe a Citrix Zen desktop server to get that Windows image, that's the image we're protecting. And while they're in that session, we can protect that data as well. And actually, we have a term for this. We actually call this virtual DLP or VDLP. That's all the questions, I think. All right, so we've come to the end of our webinar, and I'd like to thank everyone that took the time to attend. We definitely value your time, and I hope we presented some useful information for you as you work to create a secure data environment in your company. And hopefully, you're thinking about blocking and mitigating the data security exploits that hackers are actually using these days, as well as the significant insider threat that exists inside every organization, regardless of what you've already done. If you do post another question, I didn't see it, we'll have a record of that, and I can send you a direct email with the answer. Also, when we're done with this, we'll be posting basically the on-demand video version of the webinar on our YouTube channel, and we'll also probably send an email link as well to the participants in the show, or in the webinar, I should say. We also have a very short survey that will pop up once we close the webinar, so I'd really appreciate it. I know you're busy and you want to get back, but if you could really take maybe 30 seconds to answer a couple questions, it's really nothing too difficult, and we'd really appreciate the feedback. And if you have any more questions regarding device lock DLP and our award-winning data leak prevention solutions, just fire off an email to us at us.sales@devicelock.com. I'll be more than happy to answer those for you. You can always call me directly at 925-231-0041. And if you'd like to try out the device lock solution, we have a free 30-day trial on our website. Again, just go to our download page on our devicelock.com website. So thanks for attending, and we look forward to seeing you in future device lock webinars. Thank you very much.